Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel, where today we'll be playing 1914 Nach Paris. It's a new game by Vuca Simulations, designed by Bertrand Meunier. It's set during the first month or two, I guess 2 months of World War One. The hexes are 10 kilometers, and the counters are usually divisions, but there's some battalions and brigades in there as well. And so far, I'm really enjoying the game. Vuca Simulations, as always, does amazing components. And I especially like the scenario book for this game because it has about, well, let's see, 10? It has 10 scenarios, but most of them, besides the last scenario, are on these standalone maps. And what's awesome about them is like they come on an A4 size piece of paper, so you can play it on your kitchen table or something. And it's all pretty much contained here. There's a turn track and a marker setup, which are also, your usual A4 size piece of paper, but it's not sprawling. So you can play this literally on the table if you're lucky enough to have somebody to play it with. You just play it on the kitchen table, or if you're playing by yourself, you can just have everything within easy reach and not have to be reaching around and grabbing stuff, and or have a 6-foot table. So today we'll be doing scenario 4 in the scenario book, which is still a learning scenario. It's called Around the Marshes of Saint-Gond, and I don't speak French, so all of these pronunciations will be butchered. But I figured we do this one because the first 3 beginning scenarios are kind of, they're good. So the first 2, actually, the victorious recovery at Guise and the assault on Liège, they have full on, what's this called? Examples of play. So the first 2 scenarios have full examples of play with pictures, and it like highlights facets of the rule that confuse me and still actually kind of confuse me, but it's good to be able to go back and look at the example of play and be like, oh, yep, that's how you play it. And I think a lot of these really chunky war games sometimes suffer from not having a really good example of play. So I appreciate that Vuca Simulations has gone to the effort to show us how it's played, and it really reduces the confusion when trying to learn a new rule set. So the 4th scenario, you can read the background flavor text if you want, but basically it's a meeting engagement between the Germans and the French around Rheims and Chalon, I believe this little town is. And the victory conditions for the Germans, they have to hold either this hex here or one of these 3 hexes. So this hex, or this hex. And really doesn't matter because I'm going to win either way, no matter who holds these hexes, because I'm playing by myself. So you'll see that they have some specific rules, and I've already tried recording this once, and I got all the way to the end and forgot this rule here, that they have their movement factor divided by 2. So I cocked up the last turn the last time I recorded this, and I didn't want to show you guys a rule that I got wrong, just in case you're trying to learn it. Though I do caveat this by saying I will probably make a rules mistake. So yeah, don't look at this as the definitive how to play guide. Definitely look at the examples of play if you pick it up. Now, Vuca Simulations, they're very detail-oriented, and they're very dedicated to their game, which I really appreciate. And so a couple of days ago in the mail, I got an unexpected package from them, and inside were 2 counter sheets and a sheet explaining some errata that they've identified in the rulebook, which really didn't affect how I played the game. But the counter sheets basically, so I'll show you here. So this is why they sent 2 new counter sheets, because I don't even remember anymore which one is the actual. I think this is the one. This is the new one, this counter sheet. They're both the Foch headquarters counters. And one of them, I think this one apparently is too light, and they meant to make it darker. So they reprinted 2 counter sheets just so that the French headquarters had darker counters, which I kind of think is a waste. It really didn't affect how I played the game, or even now I don't know which one to use. So I don't know. I think they could have done without reprinting 2 whole counter sheets. It seems like a bit of a waste, but be that as it may, I do appreciate that they are keeping on top of their game and taking pride in what they do. So it's more than you can say for a lot of what a lot of people do in the world. So my hats are off to them. So for this scenario, for all scenarios actually in 1914, this is considered set up for the scenario. At the start, we're starting on game turn 17, which is September 3rd. So this is how you set up the game, and then what happens is they have marker setup sheets, and I'm going to bring you on over here. So they have marker setup sheets where you just find all the counters and put them on the marker, their spot on the marker setup sheet, and then during each player's turn, they bring on their forces. So on German game turn 17, which is the first turn, all their forces will be brought onto the map. And when forces are brought onto the map, they can't move when they make their arrival. So Germans will come on, and then on the French turn 17, the French will come on, and then turn 18 is kind of the first real turn, quote unquote, where units are moving and fighting and doing all that stuff. So the first turn is always bringing your forces onto the scenario. So this scenario too is, since it's a learning scenario, is trying to teach you something. So this scenario is trying to teach lines of communication. And you'll see that the special scenario rule that's applicable for that is this one, number 2. Germans are connected to their networks by high capacity rail. It gives you the rail line. And since at this point in the campaign many bridges are destroyed, no high-capacity rail inside the game surface is connected. This situation prohibits rail movements and implies that the line of communications is optimized from the hex AL20 with 40 movement factors. So what that means is, to be within your optimal line of communications, you have to be within 100 movement factors of basically a high-capacity rail terminus that connects back to your own lines of supply. So for the most part, each hex is 10 movement factors. So here's AL20. So from here, it starts at 40, then counts out. And if you go over 100, then you're on limited lines of communication, and that that has some detrimental effects. And if you're over 150, then you're just totally outside of, you get this counter, which is out of communication, and that has even more bad effects, obviously. So what gets me though is there's, as I'll show you, a lot of German units set up with these markers, the limited line of communications markers, based on how it tells you to set up on the marker setup sheet. But when I count it, it doesn't seem like there are more than 100 movement factors from AL20, starting with 40. Anyway, I'll point that out, but if anybody in the comments can explain why these units are going to be in limited line of communications, I'd appreciate it. Otherwise, I'm just going to kind of play it how I have been going through it, and since I only have myself to complain, I get away with it. So that's about it for me talking. We're going to go into the game now, to game turn 17, which is the first turn of this scenario with the German side. And I'll just see if I can show you the player aid with the phases. So first we have the admin phase, which we skip, barrage phase as well, and we skip right to the movement phase to unit arrivals. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video, bring in all the Germans, and bring you back when they're all set up. All right, so here are the Germans set up. So as I said, they need to either capture, I believe, this hex right here. It's a hill. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. But either this hex or 2 of these 3 hexes. This hex, and this hex. And you see here they have their limited line of communication markers, and so this is what I'm talking about. So starting with 40, for example, to this is the 19th Infantry Division. So starting from 40, it goes 50, 60, 72, 84, which should be below 100. I mean, it is below 100, so I'm not exactly sure why they get a limited line of communications marker here. Unless it's supposed to be like on this game turn, the logistics haven't quite caught up to it, because as you'll see in the administration phase, each turn you have to do line of communications determination. So when it's the French turn for game turn 17, we're gonna have to check all this and pretty much everything but maybe I think these two stacks are going to be within normal line of communications. Anyway, so we see that we have the Second Army under von Bülow and the Third Army under von Hausen. I think it's 2 corps each, thereabouts, are going to be pushing forward. And so the only thing left that we can do in the German phase is we can do fieldworks construction. Now in this game, each scenario tells you how many times you can fail at creating fieldworks. So in this scenario, both the French and the Germans can try or can fail creating fieldworks once. So you can make as many fieldworks as you want as long as you keep succeeding, but once you fail once, that's it, you're done for the scenario. But since we're going to be attacking as the Germans, we are going to not build any fieldworks. So we'll go into the French turn, and this comes to one of our first special rules, which is this one here. During the movement phase at the time of the unit's arrival, French units may position themselves either in the initial hex or in the adjacent hex not occupied by the Germans. So that will allow us to kind of take more advanced positions. And so before the last time I recorded, I put everybody in the hex that they're listed on the marker setup sheet just to see how that plays. And that was pretty easy for the Germans to win, because once they get into basically like this hex and this hex, that's 2 of the 3 that they need. And then the French can't really counterattack into them, because as I've learned, attacking in this game, just like I think in real life World War I, you need an overwhelming superiority of force to get people out, especially when they're in terrain like this forest or behind these marshes. So anyway, that's the German turn done. Now I'll bring in the French and show you how that looks. All right, and here the French are deployed. So as I mentioned, the Germans check the line of communications and they pull the limited lock counters, except from these 2 divisions of the 19th Corps out here in Chalon, which are definitely above 100 from AL20. So the French are deployed, and what we did was we forward deployed the 1st and the 10th Corps. Each have 2 pretty good divisions under them, especially the 1st Corps, which has the 1st and 2nd Infantry divisions. So on the marker setup sheet, they get deployed here and here. We deployed them 1 hex forward because this is a victory hex. And so we don't want the Germans to just be able to walk in and take it. And then we put the 10th Corps forward as well so that they could protect the flank, because as you can see, this game uses counter unit facing. So your front is whatever the 3 front hexes of your counter are, your flank or the side, and then your rear, obviously. And that gives you certain bonuses or takes away points from your rolls when you go check your combat actuarial table results. So that's the French turn done. Now what we're going to do is we are going to try to build some fortifications. And what we're going to do is we're going to do it on these units here on this hill, which is a victory point hill, and it's held by the Moroccan Division and the 17th Infantry Division. And I guess I'll go through kind of what's on these counters real quick. So the A means that it's an A troop quality. It goes down to C, I believe, and all the way up to A+. The A means that they don't have to retreat automatically. If they suffer a step loss, they can kind of hold their ground better. The 4 black dots are the steps of the unit. So if we flip it, we see that there's 1 red dot now. That means this has taken 1 step loss. The 13 is the troop quality, or like the morale check number. There's they call it the CAC, I believe, combat capability, I think. Anyway, so when you have to do a morale check, you basically have to roll under that number, and there's different modifiers for that. The 21 is the combat factor. So when you're adding up all the combat factors of a battle, that's what you're going to add up. The 5 is the artillery factor. The 0 is the artillery factor against fortifications, and the 50 is the movement. And as you can see, it's I'm not even going to remember or try to pronounce it, but it's the Moroccan division in this case. So that's kind of what the counters look like, and I'll try to point other things out as they are applicable. So we're going to try to make a field work here. So we go to the player aid, and we look here at the fieldwork construction and improvement. I'm sorry, not CAG. I think I said CAG. I meant CAB, combat ability, I think. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of these 3-letter acronyms that I just completely forget most of the time. So we're going to be doing it with this whole stack. And so it says make grouped attempt by taking the lowest cab of the infantry units involved. And so the lowest cab in this stack is the 17th Infantry Division's 12. And then, so they are a French or Belgian unit beginning with game turn 10, since we're in game turn 17, which is a, let me see if I can get, yep, there we go, a -5. So we're at 12 minus 5, so at a 7. So on a D20, we need to roll a 7 or below to create fortifications here. And we roll a 9. So that's a failed fieldworks attempt, which means that the French can no longer try to make fieldworks in this scenario. So it was worth a shot, but didn't pan out for the French. So now we're going to go into game turn 18, which is September 5th to 6th. I should say that each turn is 2 days. And I should also mention this as well. This is a this just signifies that this bridge here, which is represented by the P, which is pont, I guess in French, is out of service, or it's blown up, and it would take a German engineering unit 5 game turns to get back into service. And the only other thing I should mention was the black lines are rail lines. They're not roads, so you don't have to worry about different movement factors for roads versus fields versus like tracks or something. It's all just clear hex to clear hex is 10 movement factors. And so, yeah. So that's the French turn. We're going into turn 18 now, the Germans, which means we check for lines of communication determination, which everything is still the same. So everybody, that's all done. Now the barrage phase, you could do preparatory artillery barrage or declare an assault artillery barrage against a fortification. Now, if you do a barrage, you can't move and you can't do combat. So it kind of locks you in place. But so since the Germans are going to be attacking, they're not going to want to do a preparatory barrage. So we go right over the barrage phase into the movement phase. We check to see if the Germans have any incoming units. They don't on turn 18. So there's no unit arrivals. So now we just do movement. So I'll go ahead and move everybody, get them into their attack positions, and bring you back when that's all set up. Okay, here's the German movement completed. So we've moved up across the entire front, concentrating the Guards Infantry Division for an attack on the Moroccans holding the hill. I go back and forth whether it's worth to try attacking the 1st Infantry Division or 1st Infantry Corps over here. But there are 2 very good units with artillery support, so I don't think that's going to happen. Over here, elements of the 12th Corps and the 19th Corps took this victory hex. And then, yeah, so the big battle is going to be here. So what we do now for the battle, because that's the next phase, is the combat phase, is we add up the combat factors for each side, make a ratio out of them, and then can do some modifiers probably, and then consult our actuarial table using the ratio, rolling a die that's modified, and then finding, you know, the combat result. So I'm going to need to pause it here to get my calculator out and do some math, and I'll bring you back when I got all the modifiers and the combat ratio and we're ready to roll. All right, so after doing the math, I've kind of de-stacked them so we can see everybody, but it's these 3 hexes attacking into this hex right here. So after the math, it's a 4-to-1 in favor of the German attackers. Now, if we look at the combat modifiers, the defenders are in broken, and the attackers are attacking from broken terrain. So the terrain modifier is a +12 on our die roll. And the only one over here that I can identify for them is attacking from 3 hexes for -3. So it's +9 to this die roll. On the 3.5-to-1, because we round down, there's no 4-to-1 column, so we're on 3.5-to-1, +9 on this die roll. That's not good for the Germans, or it's not ideal, I should say. So we're at 25, which is the very bottom row, very bottom row, 25, 3.5-to-1. So this means that the French automatically take a step loss, then have to do a cab test with a +2 modifier. So basically what happens is the 17th Infantry Division will take a step loss and then will be forced to retreat. So here's their second counter. They'll be forced to retreat because they're a B-rated unit. Now the Moroccans, though, like I mentioned, they're an A quality unit, so they only have to take a step loss, but they can still stay in their hex until they take a second step loss, and then they'll be forced to retreat. So now the French need to pass a cab test with a +2 modifier. And if we go back to the cab modifier lists, so they were attacked with 2 units, 3 units, 4 units that have red artillery factors. And I think this gets capped at 3. I could be wrong, don't quote me on this, but I think so. That's -3, so we're at -1. They were attacked with 5 artillery factor. That's it. So 5 artillery factors is another -1. So they're at -2 on this cab modifier roll. So 13 -2 is 11. So the French have to roll an 11 or below to pass this cab test, the Moroccans. They roll a 9, which means they pass and they can stay in that hex, which is terrible news for the Germans. Now the 17th Infantry Division, they're on a 9 cab right now. -2 is 7, so they have to roll a 7 or below to prevent themselves from taking a second hit of attrition. They roll a 13, which means they lose another step. They're down to 1 step, and they're pretty... it seems like they probably took the brunt of that attack. Now, the Germans need to make their own cab tests with a +3 modifier. And as you'll see, none of these... there are a couple that are at extended march. That's what these counters are for. So these 3 units have the extended march. they get -2, so they only get a +1 modifier. So I'll go ahead and roll everybody and bring you back and let you know who's suffered some attrition losses, and show you the state of things at the end of this attack from the Germans. All right, so after doing the cab tests, basically the 23rd Reserve Division and the 32nd Infantry Division both lost steps, so they're down to 3 steps each, but everything else remains as it was at the beginning of the combat for the Germans. They get to remain in their position since the French had to retreat first, and they have to wait until next turn now to try attacking that hex again. And the real problem is for the Germans that the French will be able to reinforce the Moroccans now, and it'll be even more difficult to dislodge them from that hex. So that's going to be the end of the German combat, but we are going to try to do a fieldworks construction on this hex here, because this hex is out in the open. It does have 2 infantry divisions protecting it, but it's a victory hex, so we want to give them every opportunity we can to get them placed in that hex. So they're a German unit, so it's a -5, and they did move, so we don't get that. So a -5 from the lowest cab. So it's a 12 -5 is a 7. So they need a 7 or below to get some field works in here. And they rolled an 11, so no field works for the Germans this scenario. So that's the end of the German turn. Now we go to the French turn 18. And the first thing we do is check for lines of communication. So I'm going to do some counting. I think these hexes maybe are out of line of communication, but I'll bring you back to let you know. Okay, so yeah, these 3 hexes are all out of line of communication, and they're in limited line of communication, I should say. So now we go into the French turn. Now the French, I think they will do some barraging over here on the 1st and 10th Corps, because they don't plan to attack. They don't intend to move, I don't think, at least not yet. We still have plenty of divisions over here to kind of throw into the breach. The French do get 1 arrival, the 18th Infantry Division, with 1 step loss. So yeah, I think we'll do some barraging. So with that, we'll do the 19th and 20th. I think, yeah, we'll do them, both of these, into this hex here, so that maybe we can alleviate some pressure on the Moroccans. So they have a combined artillery factor of 20. So we go to the artillery bombardment table. They're in the 20 column, so they can hit as many units in their target hex as they want. But because they are French, so tactical modifiers to an ABU, or artillery bombardment against a unit, there's more than 1 unit is a +1. So we're going to add 1 to this roll, and so as you'll see, for the artillery bombardment, we roll a d20, have it, and then add the artillery modifier. So we go ahead and roll it. Oof. So that's, in this case, you want to roll really low. 19 divided by 2 is 9.5. Round up is 10 to an 11 for the +1, and the 20 column is a blank. So nothing going there. But, you know, we didn't really expect much. It's one of those things where if you do kind of get lucky and you hit them, it's kind of embarrassing. So this deck gets a prep barrage launch counter, and that reminds us that they can't move or do combat. I should also do a step loss counter here, because you can't do combat when you have after you get a step loss. So that's the prep barrage phase, or a barrage phase completed for the French. Now it's going to be the movement phase. And so we introduce the 18th Infantry Division on AI 12. Now they can't move this turn, but they're going to be there for next turn. And I'm going to pause it, think about what I want to do with the movement. I think we're probably going to obviously reinforce the Moroccans, but we might also want to do a counterattack against this hex. Maybe not though, because we are still, right now the Germans don't have a victory yet. So yeah, let's just go ahead and reinforce the Moroccans, maybe pull the, what's this again, the 17th Infantry Division out of line. Yeah, I'll bring you back when that's all completed. Okay, here are the French at the end of the movement. So we moved the 52nd Reserve Infantry Division and the 21st Infantry Division into the hex with the Moroccans. We shifted over the 51st Reserve Infantry Division from the left over to the right, and we moved up the 60th Reserve Division into line. I don't think we're not going to do any attacking, spoiling attacks or anything, but what we do need to do at the end of the combat phase is replacement absorption. And you get replacements as the French in the last turn and this turn for a total of 3 replacements. I banked the first 2 replacements. I didn't mention that, sorry, but I wanted to see kind of where we were going to need some replacements. So what we're going to do is we're going to replace a unit. Oh yeah, so we're going to replace the Moroccan step loss. So they're back up to 4 steps. I had to check because, so see, this is the 42nd Infantry Division is an A+. That requires 2 replacements, but just an A only requires 1 replacement point. So we're down to 2 replacements. And now in this broken terrain, we can only have a max of 12 steps. But either way, if we build up the 52nd Reserve, so now it's 12 steps total in this hex. So that's 2 replacements. And I think we'll give 1 back to the 17th Infantry Division. So that's all 3 of our replacements used. And yeah, that's the French turn. So we remove the counters for all this. They're able to do combat now. And that's the French turn. We're just going to have to sit and wait for the German attack to come on game turn 19. So basically there's 2 turns left. This ends on September 10th, which is game turn 20. And we're just going into game turn 19 now. So again, we do, for the German administrative phase, lines of communication, nothing has changed. Artillery barrage, again, I don't think the Germans are going to be doing anything like that. So we're going to go right into the movement phase. But for game turn 19, the Germans do get 2 arrivals. The 14th Infantry Division and the 24th Reserve Division. So the 24th Reserve Division comes in AI 17, comes in here. And the 14th Infantry Division gets some special rules. So there are special rules 5. So it appears in basically one of these hexes over here with 20 movement factors remaining. So we'll bring him in on this hex. We'll move the 19th Reserve Division 1 hex over. Or no, actually. So we'll move the 14th Infantry Division. Will go, so it comes in with 20 left. We'll move it here. Nope, my cat is starting to join the battle. And we'll move the, okay, I'm going to pause it, figure this out so you don't have to watch me moving counters back and forth. I'll bring you back when I've got it all sorted. All right, so that was what was confusing me. I forgot to restack what was this unit? The 20th Infantry Division, so that was confusing me. So that's back here. We shifted over the 2nd Guards Reserve Division to join in the attack over here. The 14th Infantry Division, we've moved into this hole here. Eventually, we're going to want to switch the 14th Infantry Division with the 2nd Guards Division because part of this game, you need to be within, I think, 3 hexes of... each division needs to be within 3 hexes of the other division in its core. So so we see here's the 10th Reserve Corps, the 2 divisions of that, and they're separated by 2 hexes. So the 2nd Guards Reserve Corps can't extend out without a penalty. And so the 7th Corps unit is by itself, so it doesn't have any of those restrictions. It can kind of move freely. So yeah, that's the setup for the German movement phase. And so now it's on the combat, and all we're going to do is the same exact thing. So again, I'll do some math, bring you back when I got all the math sorted out, and we'll see how this goes for the Germans. All right, so with the addition of the French reinforcements, it's now only a 3-to-1 for the combat odds in favor of the Germans. Now we go over here to the LLC effects, the limited line of communication, since one unit is, again, this is kind of what confuses me too, like over half of the units are within line of communication, except 1 hex isn't. But apparently, if only even 1 unit is in limited line of communication, it adds 4 to the die roll, which seems oppressive, but that's how it is. So that's plus 12, plus 4 is 16. And we're still at minus 3 for the attacking from 3 hexes. So that's plus 13 on this die roll. So 12 plus 13 is 25 on the 3-to-1. Oops, where are we? So we're at 25, 3-to-1, and there is no 3-to-1, so we're using the 2.5-to-1. So the French have to pass cab test with a -8 modifier, and again -3. So because they're getting attacked by red artillery factor units with the Guards infantry divisions. So -3, and then a another 1 for so it's -4 total for the artillery factors between 5 and 11. And so that's, sorry, what did I say? 8. So -12. So there's going to be, so for example, this is easy. 21st Infantry Division has a cab of 12. -12 is 0. They can't pass it. They fail their cab test and retreat. Same thing with the 52nd Reserve Division. Fails their cab test and retreats. Now the Moroccans need to roll a 1 basically to pass their cab test. They roll a 14, so they lose a step. But because they're an A unit, they get to stay in their hex. Now the Germans, for 2.5-to-1 on 25, get a +1 modifier on their cab test. So I'll go ahead and roll through them and bring you back and tell you who's lost what. Okay, so at the end of the cab tests, the Germans lost 2 steps, one with the 2nd Guards Reserve Division and one with the 19th Infantry Division, which is down here somewhere. There it is. Everybody else passed their cab test. Now, as part of the movement phase, which I totally skipped over, there's one that's mandatory withdrawal. And as you'll see I think it's on here. Again, these special scenario rules always get me. So the 24th Infantry Division, the 40th Infantry Division will exit on the east side with a minimum step total of 7. So that was the 19th Corps, which was over here, protecting our left flank. So they got withdrawn, but that didn't affect the combat phase at all. So I'm just going to keep playing, and apologies again that I missed that. Still learning the system, still trying to grapple everything and record and try to get the rules right for you guys. But so this is the end of the German turn 19. We go into the French turn 19. The administrative phase again. The lines of communications are the same. The barrage phase. I think the French will do another prep barrage on this stack. Again, just maybe get lucky, get a step loss. Would really help the Moroccans hold that position. And yeah, so that's kind of all they're going to do for this. So we go ahead. Again, it's a 20 with a +1 die roll because we're using 2 units. So we roll 17 divided by 2 is 8.5. And you'll see that 8.5 is already way off the even +1. So 9.5. Or sorry, 8.5 round up +1 is a 10. It's going to be off the chart and not in a good way. So, yep, that's the 10th Corps with its prep barrage. And I should also mention there are so many counters in this game, which is both cool because I love the counters, but also not cool because I often forget about them. So, there's also these counters, which are reinforcements. And then these counters, which are step loss. So to remind you that certain people lost steps, certain people got reinforcements and can't get, so you can't reinforce 2 turns in a row. So yeah, there you go. All the counters, fun stuff. So now we go into the French movement phase. And before, what I've done kind of wildly is I've moved the 1st Corps kind of over into the that hex right there, and then Germans are really kind of screwed. But I think this time we'll keep them there because we won't have anything to fill this breach on the left, and then the Germans can just attack into this victory hex. So we're going to stay here. And we are going to keep, or we're going to move up. So these are kind of, all right, I don't know why I keep doing this to you. I'll pause, bring you back when my movement is done for the French, and we'll see if there's any combat. All right, here we are at the end of the French movement phase. So the 18th Infantry Division and the 9th Cavalry Division have taken positions. I think we might do a little attack on the 23rd Infantry Division, try to force them to retreat out of that position. And then the 2 units that retreated to, well, this town, went back and joined the Moroccans on the hill. So now everybody has the same counters and can't be reinforced this turn. So yeah, that's really going to be, if the French can drive the Germans out of here, then the Germans won't have to, well, they're going to have an even bigger uphill battle on their last turn. So yeah, so we're going to do the attack here. Oh gosh. Okay, I'm going to pause the video, do my math, bring you back when everything's figured out, and then we'll do some rolling. All right, so we are 2-1 in favor of the French for a ratio. Now, this is my favorite modifier, I think, of any game I've played recently. So the French, when they attack, they get a +1 modifier because they're, quote, attacking with eye-catching uniforms. It kind of goes to the whole fact that the French had, you know, their uniforms look like this. They were like the blue with whatever, not quite khaki trousers, kind of orange, burnt umber trousers. And, well, they were pretty easy to spot. So they get a negative modifier when they're attacking for that. So they're at a +1, and then they're attacking from 3 hexes, though, so that's -3 for -2. And they're attacking a unit with a limited line of communication for -2 again. So they're -4 on this die roll on the 2-to-1 column. 11 -4, that's a pretty good roll. So we're on the 2-to-1. 11 -4 is 7. So 2-to-1 on the 7 column, or the 7 row, sorry. Can you see that? No, you can't. There it is. So the Germans automatically take a step loss. And they have to do a cab test of +1. So, however, since the 23rd Infantry Division is an A+ quality troop unit, they don't have to retreat yet. So if they pass their cab test of +1, I believe, yeah, +1, they get to stay in this hex. So go to the cab modifiers, and no red artillery factors, no artillery attacking them. So it's just a +1 modifier. So they have a 13 troop quality or cab. +1 is 14. So if they roll a 14 or below to stay in the hex and give the Germans a chance of winning the game, they do. They get a 2. So they're staying in the hex. Now the French need to pass their cab tests. They don't have any modifiers from the cab modifier list. Let's see. 7, 2-to-1. They get a +4 modifier on their cab test. So I'll go ahead and roll them, bring you back, and let you know how that looks. All right, nobody lost this step. I think Foch will be quite disappointed they didn't press the attack harder. They had the 23rd Infantry Division on their heels, and maybe if they pushed a little bit harder, they would have been able to drive them out of that victory hex. But for now, that's the Germans are going to remain, giving them a shot to win this scenario still in the last turn of the game. So that's the only combat the French are going to be doing. We don't do consolidation, replacement, or field works. So we remove this counter and these counters. And yeah, so that's the French turn. Now we go into the last turn of the game. Game turn 20, September 9th to 10th, 1914. And now, remember guys, game turn 20, the Germans and French are not allowed to perform forced marches, and all units have a movement factor divided by 2. Keep that in mind, okay? Don't let me forget that. So, game turn 20, the administrative phase, everything is the same for the administrative phase. Barrage phase, I don't think we're going to be doing any barrages. Nah. Movement phase, so we have von Hausen is going to be replaced by von Einem. And the 25th Infantry Battalion, where did he go? My cat has, there he is. The 25th Infantry Battalion comes in Special Scenario Rule 6, comes in on the west side of the board with 25 movement factors, and is not subject to regrouping. So it comes in on this hex basically with 25 movement factors remaining. But I guess that's halved, so they can basically stay there. What I'm getting out of that. So that's the movement taken care of. Now, where I went wrong the last time I played. So I was pretty much looked the same, and so I thought I was going to get clever as the Germans and swing around the Guards Infantry Corps over to kind of like this hex. And well, I was swinging them back and forth anyway. So instead of attacking this hex, which is like the broken to broken, I thought, let's attack this hex. The first corps is pretty chunky, but they don't have any bonuses. So I'm going to pause the video, see if I can get the Guards Infantry Corps with their half movement over to at least this hex and try to attack the 1st Infantry Corps instead of going pell-mell into this hill again. That's not historically accurate, I guess you could say. In the historical scenario, at least in the scenario booklet, the Germans got up to this town here before the French counterattack beat them back. But I mean, one time I played the scenario, I did get this far, and but then the line of communication tokens come into effect, and it's just really hard to hold that position. So, yeah, I think I'll pause it, bring you back when I got the movement sorted out. Okay, so here's the end of the German movement phase. So on the left, we'll start there, the easy part. The 23rd Infantry Division is now joined by the 32nd Infantry Division. I believe, are they the same corps? Yes. So 12th Corps is now holding that victory point hex together. And so then what happened, Von Bülow has decided to try to bring the Guards Infantry Corps from here. They brought it around to this hex. And they're going to join this kind of hodgepodge. Oh, it's the 7th Corps, as well as some other hodgepodge units, reserve infantry division. Anyway, to attack the 1st Corps to try to get this victory hex. So yeah, that's going to be tough, I think, for the Germans. We'll see how that goes. I'll destack everybody, count them up, do my math, bring you back when we're ready to roll. All right, we're in 2.5 to 1 in favor of the Germans. So here's the full layout of, oh, a couple of these are off the, sorry. So there we go. So it's these two hexes facing off this, 2 to 1 odds. Now we have to go look at some modifiers. So the defender's terrain is clear, but we're attacking from broken terrain. So it's a +4 terrain modifier. We're attacking from 2 different hexes for -1, so we're at +3. And I believe that is the only other modifier. So we're +3, which is a lot better than like the what were we at, 16 or something ridiculous attacking this hex. So +3 on this roll. That's still not great. So it's a 13 plus 3 is 16 on the 2.5 to 1 column. So 2.5 to 1, 16. So the French have to pass a cab test with a -8, and the Germans will have to pass it with a +1 modifier. But since there's the participation of 3 red ARFs, that's -3, so we're at -11 total, and that's it. So -11 for these French units, which are all A+, so there's no way for the Germans to kick them out of this hex, because even if they lose a step, they're just going to plant themselves in this hex. So what did I say? So -11. So 14 -11 is a 3. Oh, he passes. The 2nd division passes. Now the 1st division does not pass it, so it loses a step. But since it's an A-rated unit, 1st Infantry Division gets to stay. And the artillery doesn't need to take a check because there's still infantry units in the hex with it. Now the Germans, get a +1 modifier. So I'll go through and do them and bring you back when I figure that out. Well, it was an absolute bloodbath for the Germans. I think they lost a total of 3 or 4 steps, something like that. The 1st Guards Infantry Division lost a step. So yeah, that was not a profitable attack for the Germans. Maybe they should have just kept on attacking. Sorry. Maybe they should have just kept on attacking the lower quality units over here instead of the high quality 1st Corps. Well, you don't come to this channel for strategic or tactical brilliance, so you'll have to forgive me. Now, I mean, there is maybe a 1-to-1 attack we could get on this hex, but I don't think it's going to happen. So I think the Germans will concede defeat at this point. The only thing that's left to do is the French turn 20, and all they're going to do is hold the line. They're not going to have to attack or anything because the Germans do not hold enough victory points or victory hexes. So that's the conclusion of scenario 4. It's the learning scenario around the Marshes of St. Gond. I hope you enjoyed it. So if we look at the historical background, you'll see that the Germans kind of did get through to that town. Was it Fair Champenois on September 9th, which would have been the game turn 20. So historically, the Germans made it here by game turn 20 before the French came, von Bulow retreated because he was threatened by the French Fifth Army. So at the end of game turn 20, von Bulow retreated and consolidated his forces. And the outcome of this battle played a fundamental role in the French victory of the Marne. So that's pretty interesting. So that's scenario 4. It's a learning scenario. I can't wait to get more into this game, once I get used to it. This scenario, I mean, nothing much happened, relatively speaking. There's a couple of skirmishes or a couple of big engagements, but there's no real, movement of pieces around the board and no real strategy. It was much more tactical, which I like. It's a good mix. But I think next, I don't know, the next scenario is the siege of the fortress, Maubeuge. That's say it how you will. And this is another one of the attacking a fortified encampment. And those are interesting. They can be interesting. It's a lot of grinding down using siege artillery and stuff. It's kind of cool. It's really good for single players because usually the defender isn't really doing very much. He just kind of sits there. And with only 30 counters and it taking only an hour, I think we might be able to breeze through that one pretty quickly. So maybe I'll do that next on the channel. But what I really want to do is the Battle of Charleroi, which uses 2 of the big maps and has a whole bunch of counters. But I think we'll have to build up to that. So maybe I'll do one more scenario. We also have the Great Sortie from Antwerp as an option, which is on its own standalone map, but that takes 2 hours. Control the Belgian forces and their counterattack against the Germans. So that could be kind of cool. Get the Belgians on the table for a change. But yeah, so that's it for my first playthrough of 1914 Nach Paris. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I didn't get too many rules wrong. We'll see when I get around to editing it how bad it was, but hope you enjoyed it. And if you do, we'll see you around for the next one. Everybody, take care. Bye.